Sometimes I hear my dad in my voice. Not often, but sometimes. And when it happens, I know it. I feel it. And honestly, it scares me. This past Saturday was one of those times. Hey, I'm your host, and this is I Took the Long Way, a podcast about life, detours, bad decisions, and somehow still being here to talk about it. I'm a middle-aged Korean-American IT guy in Los Angeles, and today I want to talk about anger. My anger. Where it came from, what it did to my marriage last weekend, and what I'm trying to do about it. Pull up a chair. It started at 3:30 on a Saturday afternoon. We're in the car, headed to drop our daughter off at a friend's birthday party. LA traffic, Saturday. You already know what that means. And from the jump, my wife is telling me I'm driving too fast. Slow down, you're going too fast. And then the sounds. Oh. Every merge, every lane change, every stop. I wasn't driving too fast. I really wasn't. I have a 14-year-old car. It's 134 horsepower and it's a hybrid. How am I speeding? How? In LA Saturday traffic? In what world? So we drop our daughter off and head to Koreatown. More traffic, same commentary. Oh, slow down. And so we get to the Korean market. I get the cart. I'm pushing it with my phone propped up, playing the UFC fight, living my best life. It was a pretty good fight too. But my wife keeps warning me that someone's going to steal it the second I look away. But I'm not worried, the phone is fine. The fight is on. And then, without another word, she walks over, picks up my phone out of the cart, hands it to me, and takes over pushing the cart herself. 16 years of marriage in one move. I took the phone, said nothing, but I felt it. Then dinner. We get to valet parking. The valet rolls the windows down before he parks the car. And, my wife notices immediately, so she keeps looking back at the car during dinner. She wants to walk over and check on it. And she asked me why he rolled the windows down. And I was like, I don't know. I don't really care about the windows. The car was fine, but that was a whole thing. Then the drive home, just the two of us. No daughter in the back seat, and I'm still hearing, "You're driving too fast, oh." So we finally get home, and I'm sitting on the couch. I grabbed the gummy bears I got at the Korean market, and my wife had torn a small opening in the corner of the bag, so naturally, I just start squeezing them through the hole directly into my mouth, one by one, completely content, minding my business. And my wife looks over and says, "Are you putting your mouth on the gummy bear bag?" And that was it. After the driving, after the O's, after the phone, after the valet windows, after all of it, that was a one. I raised my voice and I said, "Why do you keep nagging me about everything?" And I got up off the couch and walked away. That was my Saturday night. I need to be honest about something, and this is the part that's harder to say out loud. What happened on that couch Saturday night, the way it came out, the volume, the abruptness, that didn't start with my wife. It didn't start with the driving comments or the phone or the gummy bears. It goes a lot further back than that. I grew up around anger that was explosive, scary. There was no discussion, no cooling down, no repair. It just happened, and then life moved on like it never occurred. I don't have a single memory of watching my parents make up after a fight, not one. I never got that template. Nobody sat me down and showed me what it looked like to be wrong, come back, and say so. And here's what nobody tells you about growing up in that environment. You carry it. Even when you don't want to, even when you've consciously decided to be different, the wiring is still in there. And on a day when everything is stacking up and your patience is already gone, that wiring activates. And on that couch Saturday night, for just a moment, I heard my dad in my voice. That scares me. It has always scared me. think it's supposed to, because the fear is what keeps me honest. So Sunday morning, my wife told me to go ahead to church first. Our daughter was exhausted from her birthday party up late. She slept in. I said, okay, and headed out. As I'm pulling into the parking lot, my daughter texts me. They're not coming. She woke up too late, so it's just me. I walked in alone, sat down, and before service starts, there's a time for prayer and confession. And so I bowed my head and I asked God genuinely, give me wisdom, guide me, because I feel like I'm losing my mind right now. And then the pastor started his sermon about anger. And I just sat there, smiling to myself, sitting alone, and I thought, of course it is. Of course the sermon is about anger. You ask God for wisdom, and He answers you immediately, and He makes absolutely sure you are uncomfortable while He does it. And then the pastor said something that stopped me cold. He said, especially if you grew up in a home where anger was a primary language, where tension was always simmering just beneath the surface, that anger just didn't stay in that house. You carry it with you. You bring it into your relationships, your marriage, your parenting. I didn't move because that wasn't a sermon point. That was a biography. Then he talked about hidden anger, how we push it down and think it disappears. He said it's like a big sandwich. You kind of push it down and the mayonnaise comes out on the sides and everything's a mess. And that's what we do with anger. We suppress it, we get good at hiding it, and then it comes out in some weird way or shape or form, like passive aggressiveness, emotional withdrawal, or in my case, yelling at my wife over a gummy bear bag at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. Then he said that reaction didn't start there. It was already there. That was just the moment it finally came out. At that point, he was talking about a 3-year-old spilling water, but in my head, I heard Koreatown traffic and a valet and a torn corner of a gummy bear bag. And then he went to Matthew 5. Jesus is preaching the Sermon on the Mount, and he says, if you're at the altar making an offering and you suddenly remember that someone has a grievance against you because of something you did, stop. Don't finish the prayer. Don't pass the offering plate. Go make it right first. And notice who Jesus puts that responsibility on. Not the person who got hurt. The person who did the hurting. However small you think your part was. Even if you feel justified in what you did or said, you go first. I didn't stay for the after service hangout. Usually we kind of hang out, chat with the other parents, chat with friends, but this time I just made a beeline straight to the parking lot, got in the car, didn't turn on the music. I just drove in complete silence. I took the long way home. And somewhere on that drive, I pulled over and I typed out a text to my wife. I want to read it to you because I think the specifics matter. A real apology isn't sorry you felt that way. It's specific. It names what happened, it owns a reaction, and it doesn't make excuses for it. So here's what I sent. Wifey, I'm sorry I got so mad and lost my patience and temper. Today's sermon was about anger. Of course it was. I know I overreacted, but I felt like I was getting criticized for everything I was doing. Driving, having my phone in the shopping cart, not carrying the valet rolled down the windows, eating the gummy bears out of the bag. Like everything came with an irritated comment. I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm letting you know how I felt. So I'm sorry I let myself boil over. She gave the text a heart emoji and then wrote back, sorry husband for seeming like I was criticizing you. Also, the gummy bear comment was supposed to be a joke, but I'm sure at that point it was too late. I'm sorry. I gave her text a heart and replied with the simple handshake emoji. And that's it. That's what repair looks like. It's not a big dramatic moment. It's not a long conversation. It's two people being specific, being honest, and choosing each other over being right. She opened the door, I walked through it, we met in the middle. The pastor said the one who caused the wound is the one Jesus sends. I didn't text her from the driveway. I took the long way home first, but I got there. So here's the part I'm still sitting with. My daughter wasn't home Saturday night. She was at the party, so she didn't see the blow up, and I'm grateful for that. But she's home other times. And so I started thinking, what does she actually see when my wife and I have conflict? We almost always repair in private. We protect that. I think that comes from a good place. We don't want our arguments to become her burden. But I think there's an unintended consequence that I hadn't really faced until this week. She doesn't see the repair either. I grew up not seeing repairs, and it left a gap in me, a blank space where that model should have been. Nobody showed me what it looked like to be wrong and come back. And I made a decision a long time ago to be different from what I grew up watching. But a decision isn't enough on its own. It has to be visible, and it has to be modeled. The pastor said anger that starts in a home doesn't stay in that home. You carry it into your relationships, your marriage, your parenting. I believe that. I lived that. And I don't want to be the reason my daughter carries something she was never supposed to pick up. My daughter is watching, even when we think she isn't. And right now, what she sees is parents who sometimes have tension and then it just goes away somehow. Same blank space I grew up with. That's the next thing I have to figure out. Not just how to repair, but how to let her see it. The pastor said we have to be the ones to initiate getting out of anger. This past Sunday, I sat alone in service, smiled to myself, and got the most on-the-nose sermon of my life. Then I got in my car, turned off the music, and drove home the long way. My dad never sent that text. I did. But my daughter never saw it. And that's the next thing I have to figure out. Well, thanks for listening to episode 2 of I Took the Long Way. Next time, I want to talk about what it actually felt like growing up Korean American. Not just the identity questions, but the specific, weird, sometimes painful, and sometimes beautiful experience of never quite fitting in either world. That one's going to get real. So take care of yourselves, and if nobody's told you lately, you're doing better than you think. I'll see you next time.